You can have physiological liminal spaces like going through puberty, where you're sort of neither here nor there. Or as my wife tells me, the process of becoming a mother, where it's sort of like you're in this in-between space between not being a mum and being a mum. But then there's the third category of liminal spaces that a lot of us might have found ourselves in, which is emotional liminal spaces. Like where you finish university before you have landed your first job and you have this like weird gap. And whenever we are in these liminal spaces, it is totally normal for that uncertainty of the space to feel really uncomfortable.
You don't know what your role is. You don't know where you're going. You don't know who else is in that space. You don't know how big the space is. Then it's really scary. Your brain is looking at this and feeling like, we have zero information. Let's get out of here.
So from an evolutionary perspective, this makes perfect sense. Like uncertainty used to equal danger. If you didn't know where your next meal was coming from, then that was a legitimate survival threat. And so our brain evolved over like 300,000 years to develop mechanisms that reduce the amount of uncertainty in our lives and help us feel comfortable with certainty. But then the problem that we have is that this survival mechanism can completely backfire in our modern lives. And so whenever we are in one of these liminal, uncomfortable, uncertain spaces, like this threshold between two things, the in-between space where you've just quit your job and you're not sure what the next thing is, the primitive regions of the brain are so wired to like rush to something certain as soon as possible so that we can feel safe. But the key thing that Anne-Laure talks about in her book, and that we talked about in the conversation as well, is that rather than trying to escape a liminal space, we should instead try to embrace it.
Good way to think about liminal spaces is to picture yourself on a plane where you're going somewhere. So there are two ways that you could react if you find yourself on a plane. The first one is to start panicking because you're not the one in the pilot seat. You have zero control and you're in this tin can that is flying super quickly in the sky, right? But there's another way you can consider this experience. This is an amazing opportunity to have time for yourself, completely disconnected from the world, no Wi-Fi, nobody can reach you, and you can finally read that book that you've been wanting to read for a long time. You can journal. You can even watch that kind of silly movie that your friends would be a little bit surprised to see you watch. And this is basically the two reactions that you can have in the liminal space.